Testing 1 2 3 1 2 3. Good morning. Happy Saturday, everybody. Um, so I am doing something a little bit different. I am using StreamYard's any little moon feature where you could be in portrait and landscape at the same time. So I wanted to try that this morning. And I never do lives really on Saturday, and I don't do lives this damn early. But we have breaking news. Nicolas Maduro, former president of Venezuela, has been captured by the US military, and they are in custody in New York City right now. Nicolas Maduro and his wife. So I wanted to play Trump's live um his live press conference that's coming up. And let me see, because I haven't been on here and I don't know how long. Okay. I haven't been on StreamYards. I don't know how long. And let me see if and what I sound like and what I look like. This is that testing. Okay. You guys could hear me. Okay, cool. All right. All right. This is what it looks like on here. And then let me pull up just a portrait one to see what that looks like. Because I can't, I need to just look at one screen online. What is this? Let's see. Actually, let me go to another. And guys, please hit the like button and share. Good morning. It's a long ass commercial. Let's see. Shouldn't it be two? Yeah. I know it's that one. And what is this? Okay. Yeah, this is the one I wanted. Let me put this here real quick. All right. So yeah, he's captured. Thank you, Sister T. Thank you. So, and like I said, I'm trying out this new feature, right? So it's experiment time. But I want to make this bigger. And let's hear some news coverage. Well, let me just do a brief background. So, President Donald Trump announced the Venezuelan leader, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife have been captured and flown out of the country after the U.S. carried out a large scale strike. Trump is expected to address the nation at 11 a.m. from Mar-a-Lago and Palm Springs. And that is what we're waiting for.
Nicolas Maduro, who woke up, frankly, facing the barrel of a gun from U.S. forces this morning in Caracas, Venezuela, ends his night in New York City as he prepares to face charges here, as that indictment has now been shared publicly. Laura Jarrett, our senior legal correspondent. Laura, thank you. I want to bring in now our White House correspondent, Monica Alba, who's there in Washington, D.C. Monica, you and I have been speaking back and forth over the course of this morning. Let's just take a moment at 11 o'clock and sort of reset the scene here about these dramatic developments that we've been witnessing. The president at roughly 4:20 this morning making the announcement, Americans waking up to the news that the U.S. was conducting strikes on the ground in and around Caracas, Venezuela, that country's capital city. And not only that, but that the U.S., as the president said, had captured and flown out of the country both Nicolas Maduro and his wife, an operation that he said was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. The operation, he said he would detail further at 11 o'clock. It is now 11 o'clock on the East Coast. We have a team on the ground at Mar-a-Lago. As soon as the president begins his remarks, we will take you there. But Monica, as we've discussed, this really marks a stunning and dramatic culmination of months that have built to this moment. The president's desire to oust Nicolas Maduro, to end drug trafficking from that country to the United States. And ultimately, it ended on the pre-dawn hours in the early days of this year with U.S. forces raiding one of the properties where Maduro had been hiding and bringing him back, in effect, to U.S. soil.
Extraordinary developments overnight, Peter. That's right. And this is something that U.S. officials confirmed to us. The president had been weighing for days. He first approved a plan to potentially do this before Christmas, more than a week ago. Of course, publicly, the president had been hinting at some potential action on land in Venezuela for a very long time. It was unclear exactly in what form that would take. Then there were a couple of days where there were questions about when that would happen, certainly with the president himself announcing just in recent days that there had been an apparent strike on a drug facility on the shore of Venezuela, not necessarily in the heart of a city or in Caracas like what we saw overnight. That raised a ton of questions about what could come next, whether that was an isolated incident, whether there were going to be more similar strikes on land. And we know, according to the president himself, who spoke earlier today, that he planned, he said, to potentially carry this out 4 days ago, but the weather was, quote, not perfect. He said essentially that he was going to be monitoring this, but that they needed to have the right window. They needed to have a few more clouds, quote, than we thought. But then once they got the ultimate signal and they waited and they were able to do it, he said all of a sudden it opened up and we said go. Now, the president has been monitoring all of this from his Mar-a-Lago club down in Florida, where we know top administration officials have been coming and going over the last couple of weeks, where he has been holding some high-level meetings, certainly with world leaders, but also continuing to approve and order, as we have seen the Department of Defense announce, the continued strikes on these alleged drug boats. We saw that as recently as leading into New Year's Eve on December 30th and 31st. There were several strikes. It wasn't clear whether they were in the Eastern Pacific or whether they were in the Caribbean, as we have sometimes seen them give that exact detail. But they did release some video, and there was a question of some potential survivors that had come from one of those vessels that the Coast Guard had gone out to potentially attempt a search and rescue on, but ultimately abandoned that. So we know this week, certainly, there have been those incremental developments when it comes to this ultimate decision that the president took overnight. But I think it's really important to point out, Peter, some insight that we got from the White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, in that Vanity Fair interview, which was published just in mid-December, where she said that the ultimate goal here of the president was to continue bombing and hitting these alleged drug boats until, quote, Maduro cries uncle. That was her phrasing. And we saw the president, again, speak to this openly, speak to this publicly. But for months, the posture of the Trump administration and the White House was that this was not about regime change per se, was that this was about this so-called war on drugs and on narco terrorists. So this is an incredibly significant development in all of this. And in terms of conversation.
So let me just pause that for a second. And they're saying that's what it is. And this is what it looks like on a scene down there in Venezuela.
Contra el malvado imperio terrorista.
Necesito conseguir un power bank urgente.
I wish I knew Spanish, but anyway, is it about drugs? Is it really about, stopping the cartels? Because if that's the case, why are we not invading Mexico? The drug industry, the drug cartels, I've heard people say it's more powerful and bigger than the oil industry. And that says a lot. So is it curbing the drugs coming in? I doubt it. Because that means we need to go invade every single South American country to really stop drugs, fentanyl, heroin, coke from coming into the United States. So I think it was something a little bit more deeper than drugs. David, oil is a sell. U.S. will have to invade to control the country. The military is still standing. Right. So you know, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I don't know. Right. And China for fentanyl. Yeah. So this is not stopping. This up taking out Maduro is not a fight on drugs. That's the excuse. Now let me see if he's talking yet. No. Yeah, so when the press conference, we're gonna go to the Trump press conference. This is the only reason why I'm live right now, and I'm testing out this new StreamYard thing. Yeah, brother. Oh no, honey. See, it's already saying lost connection to your share. Oh, see, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not used to this. I may have to just stick to my restream. What is this? Okay, let me go here. So yeah, if we are not invading other countries, then miss me with all that other stuff. This is not about the war on drugs.
Debemos irnos a la insurrección en cada calle, en cada esquina, a pelear guerra de guerrilla. No podemos permitir que el imperio se salga con la suya. Aquí nosotros somos guerreros. Aquí saben, nos enseñó a resistir y a pelear por nuestros derechos. La Constitución debe ser respetada. Aquí debe seguirse el hilo constitucional. Queremos a Nicolás.
I still can't understand what they're saying, but there are a lot of Venezuelans that are happy. Let me know if you can hear this.
You're live on the air. Two of them, I think, relate to what you and Monica were just discussing. To your point about the interplay with China here, to the majority of the oil that Venezuela exports to China, how does that come into play for the president here? What about the squaring of this latest action with his campaign promises of no new wars? But I would say, first and foremost, we've got to I think there are still some real questions about the basic nuts and bolts of what exactly has gone down here. What happens to Maduro from here? Who does President Trump want to see lead Venezuela? To your point, he said earlier today that he wanted to see the U.S. have a more vigorous role in the leadership of that country. Is it the opposition leader? Is it the vice president of Venezuela currently, who, by the way, has asked to see proof of life of Maduro? What about the congressional authorities here? Who did you notify, and at what point in the operation after it had already begun? Where does this go more broadly, Peter? Colombia could be next, the president had previously warned. You heard him this morning talk about Mexico and obviously the U.S. fight against drug trafficking.
Okay, so Mexico is on the table along with Colombia. Where are we going? Where are we going with this? It's all about Venezuelan oil. Drugs is primarily coming from Mexico and Colombia. Trump pardoned the ex-president of Honduras who was sentenced 45 years for drug trafficking. Yes, and I believe he did an interview on PBD podcast, and he was basically saying that the Biden administration is the one that locked him up and he was basically innocent. So I don't know. I need to do more research, because again, the government would tell us one thing, but then the truth, the truth is behind closed doors. So thank you, Mura Massa. I hope I said your name right.
Special report.
And so, so Trump isn't speaking just yet.
At any moment now about today's large.
Let me see if I can pull up another. Let's see what Fox News talking about, because that's NBC, and they're they're liberal. Well, let's go to this one. Oh no, let me put this down. And let me share this. Let me know if you guys can hear this.
On the West Coast, it is Saturday, January 3rd. My name is Josh Breslow, and we are going to continue to bring you coverage throughout the day as we get much more information on the detainment, so to speak, of Nicolas Maduro, the leader there in Venezuela, as well as his wife, both of whom were detained there by U.S. officials overnight, really just hours ago, as there were large-scale strikes that were conducted by the U.S. And what you're probably seeing is I keep looking down, and I did want to point out that the reason for that is we are keeping an eye on the different feeds coming in, and I'm trying to make sure that the second that we see President Trump walk in, we are able to bring that to you in full. Again, this is a live look at the stage as we learn the latest on all of this. So if you are just joining us,
He's boring. Let's go back to this.
This action days ago, more than a week ago, and that has now been essentially an hour by hour wait to see when the final go ahead would happen. We now know, as you mentioned, that it started overnight last night, now about 9 hours ago, these first explosions. We don't have a whole lot of detail about exactly what the U.S. military component was here. The president, in first announcing this on Truth Social, called these U.S. strikes, not airstrikes. A couple of the assets that we know the U.S. has in the region include U.S. Navy ships that have the ability to fire Tomahawks or T-LAMs. Those are missiles that can fire and strike in a very precise location and give the military standoff capability. Essentially, that means that they can fire them from far enough back that those that are doing the firing, the ship itself, is not necessarily in danger should wherever they're trying to strike, try to counter strike against them. But the social media videos that we have been seeing do appear to show U.S. military helicopters. It looks like U.S. Chinooks. Those are generally people movers. It wouldn't surprise me, Tom, if we learned that President Maduro and his wife were put on those, or some of the U.S. officials who went in for that ground operation went in on those Chinooks. We also know that the 160th Special Operations Unit, that is of course, you may have heard of them, the Night Stalkers. They were involved in the raid that took out Osama bin Laden in 2011. We know that they have sent additional assets to the region in recent weeks. Now, it could be that they had some of those up. They have things called Little Birds. They're small, fast, low-flying attack helicopters. It wouldn't surprise me if we heard that they were involved in this in some way. And then we are also seeing indications that there may have been U.S. Ospreys up. It wouldn't surprise me, again, if those were also used to carry Nicolas Maduro and his wife out of the country and potentially to bring U.S. troops in. But one of the biggest questions that we have, we're hoping we get some fidelity from President Trump and others at this news conference in only moments, is exactly what authorities were used here. So in other words, who was the lead on this operation? If, in fact, the justification, the legal justification, was to go in and take out Nicolas Maduro because of the indictment against him for narco trafficking and other alleged offenses, then was the U.S. military used for that? And if so, under what authorities? Again, Tom, the other thing that is we're really hoping we get some answers on is the U.S. military in this took strikes on a sovereign nation's military. These were Venezuelan military locations that were targeted in some of the video that you see here. What were the authorities under which the U.S. took those strikes? Senator Mike Lee tweeting that Marco Rubio explained to him that the justification for that was to protect the U.S. officials who were going in on the ground, to make sure, essentially like a shaping operation, make sure that they made it as safe as possible for those U.S. officials to go in and take Maduro out. But what was the actual legal authority of those? Those are the kinds of questions that we hope to get to President Trump and officials this morning, Tom.
And then, Courtney, as we get those granular details and as they come in, we may or may not know them. We have to also talk about sort of the intelligence of all of this.
Yeah, I'm going to switch to another broadcast here. Let's try this one. What is this?
I get a doctor's appointment. Well, it's a lot quicker with allfamilypharmacy.com.
Okay, he's doing a commercial. Nope.
Continue to grow and expand, and all the things that it takes to run a network. Of course, as we are covering this event live in Mar-a-Lago today, our full camera there, our access to that camera is not something that is free. So if you'd like to help out, you can. So just text RSBN to 801-801 or go to rsbnetwork.com/donate. Those of you that have watched us over the years, thank you so much for streaming in. This is a big one today, this press conference, of course. So that's why we're here live on this Saturday, January 3rd, getting ready to go to Mar-a-Lago there and go live with the press and hear from President Trump. Let's continue our coverage by sharing with you the statement from the Attorney General Pam Bondi saying, quote, Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, have been indicted in the Southern District of New York. Nicolas Maduro has been charged with narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices against the United States. They will soon face the full wrath of American justice on American soil and American courts. On behalf of the entire U.S. DOJ, I would like to thank President Trump for having the courage to demand accountability on behalf of the American people. And a huge thank you to our brave military who conducted the incredible and highly successful mission to capture these two alleged international narco traffickers.
Now they're calling them narco traffickers. All right, let me go to this one.
Of course, today's events in Venezuela did not happen in a vacuum. They were a result of careful preparation. For months, the U.S. had been building up its military in the Caribbean. Warships moved into the region. Military bases that had been closed for years were brought back into use. Aircraft began flying surveillance missions. And deadly strikes were carried out on what the Americans called drug boats. All of this happened in the run-up to today's attack, before Maduro was captured and removed from power. Our next story takes you through the build-up, the military campaign that set the stage for today.
Before Venezuela's president Nicolas Maduro was captured today, something unusual had been unfolding around his country. For months, America was encircling Venezuela. Slowly, methodically, and piece by piece. It started at sea. American warships began appearing on the horizon. Destroyers, cruisers, amphibious assault ships, each one loaded with troops, each one carrying heavy military equipment. One by one, they took up positions in the Caribbean. Then Washington raised the stakes. Into these waters came the aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford. It is the largest warship in the world. It houses thousands of troops on board and dozens of fighter jets that are ready for combat. The buildup was not limited to the sea. On land, old bases were reactivated. In Puerto Rico, the former Roosevelt Roads Naval Base was brought back into use. It had been silent for years. Now it was alive again. Runways were repaired. Taxiways were cleared, and temporary air traffic control towers were installed. Soon the skies filled with cargo planes. Massive C-17s came thundering in from U.S. bases. Their bellies were full of equipment, supplies, and personnel. Even civilian airports were transformed. Reaper drones appeared on the ground. Electronic warfare aircraft followed, and so did long-range surveillance planes. In the air, activity increased steadily. U.S. spy aircraft flew repeated missions across the Caribbean. Maritime patrol planes tracked shipping routes, and long-range bombers flew close to Venezuelan airspace, officially described as training flights. Then the operation turned deadly. From September onwards, American forces began striking boats. These were boats accused of drug trafficking. Drones hunted them down, gunships finished them off, and missiles streaked across the water. At least 35 such strikes have been carried out, and more than 100 people have been killed. Oil tankers linked to Venezuela have also been seized. Washington later also announced a blockade on sanctioned vessels. All of this has followed a deliberate shift in American strategy. President Trump's latest national security strategy has redrawn the map. The Western Hemisphere is now priority number one. It is America's backyard. Migration has been elevated to a national security threat. So have drugs and transnational crime. The doctrine is clear. America will secure the neighborhood. It will use force if necessary. Hence, the ships have been positioned, the aircraft have been deployed, The bases have been activated and the strikes have been carried out. So every piece was already in position before today's operation, before the attack in Caracas. What the world witnessed today was simply the final act. The military buildup had already written the eventual ending.
That's all we have for you on this special edition of
All right, and let's go to this.
Here, the celebrations behind you.
That's right. The demonstrators here tell me that this is a day that will go down in history for the people of Venezuela. They tell me this was not an act of war, but an act of freedom here. And so we are here in Doral at El Arapazo. This is a gas station, but people have pretty much occupied it, and they've been here since before the sun got up here. People have been hugging, singing, celebrating. They've been singing the U.S. national anthem, the Venezuelan national anthem here. And again, there is such a massive Venezuelan population here in Doral, so this really does hit home. There are people with family down in Caracas, and they tell me they're more comfortable with going down to see them now with Maduro being removed here. The demonstrators tell me with the last election in Venezuela, where Maduro was accused of rigging the election and seizing power, people tell me this was the only way to get him out. Here's what someone said that we spoke to earlier.
It means that they waited so many years for a chance at freedom, and it's finally here. So it's 26 years of, of waiting and waiting for a better Venezuela that's free. And now they're going to be able to all go back and enjoy with their families.
And again, a very emotional time for the Venezuelan community here. As we all know, Maduro had succeeded Hugo Chavez. So many of the people here have been waiting to be able to say that they have a more free Venezuela here and that they can go back to their families here. We are going to be here throughout the morning getting reaction from the Venezuelan community here. And we see some elected officials coming here. So be sure to stay with us both on air and on live. But for now,
All right, so thank you, Boo Man says Trump and America are trash. Y'all do know that taking over Venezuela is part of the New World Order, right? Well, which one? Which New World Order? Because it's a whole bunch of them. We got a whole bunch of New World Orders that's going on.
we are live in Doral. Steve Najiri, CBS News, Miami.
All right, so let me go here.
And we know that Senator Rubio is now Secretary of State Rubio, who's been in charge with multiple jobs, including intelligence as well. Talk to me about that relationship and the role that the Secretary of State played in all of this.
Yeah, let me pause that for a second. So this is a good question. So Cuba is next, then I guess. They keep saying that. I don't think so. And I'm going to save that question for tomorrow or Monday show. Because people are saying, oh, Cuba's next, Cuba next. It's not that cut and dry. It's not.
Now, of course, brought into the fold in this second Trump administration has become, quite frankly, Tom, one of his most trusted advisors. When you ask President Trump about the future of MAGA, who should take the baton, he talks about the vice president, but he also talks about Secretary Rubio. And I think it really underscores the strength of that relationship, Tom.
Okay, Kristen, stand by for us again. We are waiting for President Trump to walk out at any moment at Mar-a-Lago to take the podium. We're going to bring you those comments live as they happen. We also want to let you know that President Trump has released what we understand is video of Maduro in custody and also some video of the attack. We're going to have those momentarily. As I mentioned earlier, Keir Simmons is part of this coverage as well. Keir, I want to go to you. At the time that the United States has just taken out the leader of Venezuela, they've been trying to negotiate peace between Russia and Ukraine. This incredibly complicates both those negotiations and also it leaves sort of, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a vacuum, but there are questions about who's in charge in Venezuela right now and what role does the U.S. play in that?
Yeah, it's hard to find words, isn't it, Tom? And it's not surprising because we haven't seen an intervention, a U.S. intervention in Latin America like this since the 1980s. We do know, though, of course, Tom, from more recent history that regime change is unpredictable. Once you remove a leader in a country, what happens next, that is in question. And members of Maduro's regime are saying that there is stability and that this didn't work effectively. So there are huge questions. And around the world, America's adversaries and allies will be watching and waiting to see what plays out now. There has been some criticism significantly from the French foreign minister saying this kind of intervention is effectively, he says, it is wrong. And I think that's striking in terms of the breaks in international diplomacy that we have seen in 2025. But if leaders around the world, Tom, didn't get the message in 2025, they're getting it now at the beginning of 2026. The Trump administration messaging quite clearly, you must bend to our will. And as you say, questions from many, many countries, not least Russia. President Putin was very close to Maduro. They are allies. What does this mean for Russia? Is this a weakening of Russia? Is this effectively, a strike by the Trump administration against Russia as well as against Venezuela, against Russian interests? Certainly, in the U.S. national security strategy at the end of last year, what we were told is that the U.S. believes the Western Hemisphere is its area, that it wants to assert itself, and it certainly is with this strike overnight. And that assertion is directed at Russia. It's also directed at the Iranians who had a close relationship with the Maduro regime. And there are protests in Iran right now. What will the Iranian leadership be thinking? It's also directed at China. As Peter Alexander said earlier, we saw Chinese officials with Maduro just in the past few days. What message does this send? Because the Chinese were trying to say, this is our friend, don't usurp him. Well, that didn't work.
Keir, I do want to talk to you because you've done a lot of reporting about China's encroachment in this region as well. We can't talk about Venezuela and what's just happened and not talk about the oil reserves there. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world. In many ways, feeding the countries that are not friends to the United States. The president has spoken about the oil that was taken, he says, by Venezuela that was U.S.'s oil from U.S. companies. This is going to complicate matters because it's unclear what happens with the oil production in Venezuela going forward.
Yeah, no question. And the Russians are playing a role in the Venezuelan oil industry as well. We should say, Tom, you can't just switch on the taps in Venezuela with that oil industry. It does have massive reserves, but it doesn't. It's not an industry.
We took the oil. What do you mean? Was it we took it? That's why when what the U.S. was bombing, yes, they was bombing military bases, and also, this is a strategic plan to control the oil. You're not going to, if you're going to uproot the president and they're going to put in, I think that woman who won the Nobel Peace Prize as president, because they already told the vice president, you ain't going to be in charge. Don't step up to be president. Go leave. You need to resign. Because now the United States are going to place that woman to be president, and she is going to give the United States control of the goddamn oil. Thank you, Maura Mansa again says, so Trump doing this gives China the green light to invade Taiwan. Ooh, yes. Yep. The ramifications down the road will be devastating. Yes. Do you have a plan, Trump, for if China invades Taiwan? Mark Rubio, Secretary of State. Oh, honey, I got to charge my mouse. This thing always goes out. Let me give a little bit of juice on it. Yeah. What is going to happen with that? That's not even a question. That's a great statement. So if China invades Taiwan, so we going to war because we supposed to be protecting Taiwan. I need to do research on why are we protecting Taiwan? What they got to do with us? But Russia, China, they fucks with Venezuela. And we went in there and took their president out, brought him here for him to be charged. Did Trump, now Congress, when they go back in session on Monday, they're going to be like, well, did he violate international laws? Did he overstep his executive order? We put in someone in the position of being president in Venezuela, taking control of the oil distribution. So that means you cutting off Russia and China, cutting off the drug supply because China and Russia had their hand in that as well. This is a mess. And I hope the Trump administration, the Department of War, Mark Rubio, Secretary of State, they better have a good ass plan, long term, not short term, but long term. Let's see. Guys, please share and hit the like button.
Will prompt criticism from some that there needs to be a strategy here rather than simply just the tactic of removing Maduro. We have seen pictures, Tom, of civilians on the streets in Venezuela in support of Maduro. And you're right. If you are Venezuelan sitting at home right now, cowering perhaps a little bit, wondering what happens next, and you are against the Maduro regime, you are trying to calculate whether if you walk out onto the streets, you will become a victim. Will you be supported by the US? Will those forces that Maduro built up around him that you so eloquently describe, will they target you? These kinds of things we know because we've seen this kind of thing before. And you have to be careful with comparisons. But if you take, for example, the US experience in Iraq, where, of course, Saddam Hussein was removed, so that was regime change. What the US then faced was a challenge about who should run the country, how the country should be run, and a civil war. Now, you do have to be careful with these comparisons, completely different part of the world, but the principles are familiar. And the question of whether you can change a country, make it more stable, maybe even make it democratic with kinetic power that doesn't involve boots on the ground is a looming question here. And of course, the US has tried boots on the ground before, and that in the past, in some parts of the world, hasn't worked.
He makes a good point. He makes a good point because this is nothing new to where the America invaded a country, took out their leader, president.
Maybe as the interim power brokers, and it wouldn't be new to this region. Latin American politics has seen many military.
And every time when we've done that, they have been our military boots on the ground.
Ministers and military. There's also a third player in this game, and that is the Venezuelan opposition, or whatever is left of them. The opposition is fractured, but they're all backing one candidate, Edmundo González Urrutia. They say he is the legitimate president, but Edmundo is not in Caracas right now. He is in exile in Spain. And he's not some political novice. This man is a former ambassador, a negotiator, a political figure with international support. And the opposition is rallying behind him. One of his backers is Maria Corina Machado. If the name sounds familiar, it's because she won the Nobel Peace Prize this year. She is one of the biggest voices of the Venezuelan opposition. And Donald Trump likes her. After all, she dedicated her Peace Prize to Trump. Last month, Machado was in Oslo to receive her Nobel. And she spoke to the press there. This is what she said.
I would say to all citizens of the world in this hour, and I assure you that I am very hopeful Venezuela will be free, and we will turn a country into a beacon of hope and opportunity of democracy. And we will welcome not only the Venezuelans that have been forced to flee, but citizens from all over the world that will find a refuge as Venezuela used to be decades ago.
Machado also said that she and her movement were preparing for a transition. They believed that the Maduro regime was in danger, and they were preparing for what was coming next. She also confirmed something else, that González offered her the role of vice president in a future civilian government. So if he takes over as president, if González takes over as president, Machado could be the vice president. Now, we don't know if that agreement still stands, but that's what she said last month. Now, let's assume that the opposition does take over. They take charge of the country, and the police and the military support them. The opposition, in fact, claims that this will happen and that the security...
Let's go here for a second. See this picture of Maduro after he was captured.
Trump's policies, who said no, and who's now in handcuffs with earmuffs on so that he won't know what is being said around him, won't know where he is. A man who went from a palace to now going to a courtroom and potentially
and trial. It appears in New York. He was indicted in both the Southern District of Florida and in New York for charges stemming of drug trafficking, being a narco-terrorist, colluding with the cartels, allowing his country to be a meeting point, to be in a shipping point for they said millions of tons. I don't know if that exact figure is correct, of cocaine coming out of Venezuela to the United States and around the world. His wife also taken into custody. And if you're wondering why his wife was also taken into custody, she has held many roles in Venezuela in the political hierarchy, once as attorney general, once as the leader of parliament. Some have said she's as popular as her husband, Nicolás Maduro. So both of them have been taken into custody. Of course, Maduro rising to power after Hugo Chavez was dying of cancer. He was in his third term, 2 of his elections deemed completely illegal by the international community. Even his last election, more Venezuelans voting for the opposition party, and yet he stayed in power as a true dictator in Latin America, building ties with places like Cuba, building ties with Russia and Iran and China, maintaining those relationships throughout.
We are quick to call someone a dictator, a horrible, leader. And it's like, listen, our presidents here have not been that great either. Neither. Thank you again, Maura Mansa. I wonder if Juan Guaido, I hope I'm saying his last name, will make a comeback. I don't even know who that is.
They're very important.
But I think a lot of people are going to start peeping their heads up
To different military actions, but the visuals are very similar here.
I think they're very similar, and I think it's no surprise. President.
Let's see. Let's go here.
With money, equipment, and deals. And China in particular became a major player. This has bothered President Trump because Venezuela is not just another country. Venezuela is a country in Latin America. This is Washington's own backyard. Nicolás Maduro understood the stakes. In October 2025, pressure from the United States started building, so Maduro sent an offer to Washington. His officials proposed a sweeping deal. Venezuela would give American firms, quote unquote, dominant stakes in its oil and mineral sectors. That's what they offered. This included both existing and future projects. Late
last night and early today, at my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault. And it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicolás Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history. And if you think about it, we've done some other good ones, like the attack on Soleimani, the attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and decimation of the Iran nuclear sites just recently in an operation known as Midnight Hammer.
Midnight Hammer.
All perfectly executed and done. No nation in the world could achieve what America achieved yesterday, or frankly, in just a short period of time. All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark and it was deadly. But captured along with his wife, Celia Flores, both of whom now face American justice. Maduro and Flores have been indicted in the Southern District of New York. President Jay Clayton for their campaign of deadly narco-terrorism against the United States and its citizens. I want to thank the men and women of our military who achieved such an extraordinary success overnight with breathtaking speed, power, precision, and competence. You rarely see anything like it. You've seen some raids in this country that didn't go so well. They were an embarrassment. If you look back to Afghanistan, or if you look back to the Jimmy Carter days, they were different days. We're a respected country again, like never before. These highly trained warriors operating in collaboration with U.S. law enforcement caught them in a very ready position. They were waiting for us. They knew we had many ships out in the sea, we're just sort of waiting. They knew we were coming. So they were in a ready, what's called a ready position, but they were completely overwhelmed and very quickly incapacitated. If you would have seen what I saw last night, you would have been very impressed. I'm not sure that you'll ever get to see it, but it was an incredible thing to see. Not a single American service member was killed, and not a single piece of American equipment was lost. We had many helicopters, many planes, many people involved in that fight. But think of that, not one piece of military equipment was lost, not one service member was, more importantly, killed. The United States military is the strongest and most fearsome military on the planet by far, with capabilities and skills our enemies can scarcely begin to imagine. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. There's no equipment like what we have. And you see that even if you just look at the boats. You know, we've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by sea. 90%. Each boat kills on average, 25,000 people. We knocked out 97%. And those drugs mostly come from a place called Venezuela. We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper.
There you go. America going to take over Venezuela.
Can take place. So we're going to stay until such time as we're going to run it essentially until such time as a proper transition can take place. As everyone knows, the oil business in Venezuela has been a bust, a total bust for a long period of time. They were pumping almost nothing by comparison to what they could have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared to do a second wave if we needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not. The first wave, if you'd like to call it that, the first attack was so successful, we probably don't have to do a second, but we're prepared to do a second wave, a much bigger wave, actually. this was pinpoint, but we have a much bigger wave that probably won't have to do. This partnership of Venezuela with the United States of America, a country that everybody wants to be involved with because of what we were able to do and accomplish, will make the people of Venezuela rich, independent, and safe. And it will also make the many, many people from Venezuela that are living in the United States extremely happy. They suffered. They suffered. So much was taken from them. They're not going to suffer anymore. The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. As alleged in the indictment, he personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel de las Solas, which flooded our nation with lethal poison, responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, the many, many Americans, hundreds of thousands over the years of Americans died because of him. Maduro and his wife will soon face the full might of American justice and stand trial on American soil. Right now, they're on a ship. They'll be heading to ultimately New York, and then a decision will be made, I assume, between New York and Miami or Florida. But we have people where the overwhelming evidence of their crimes will be presented in a court of law. And I've seen it. I've seen what we have. It's both horrible and breathtaking that something like this could have been allowed to take place. For many years after his term as president of Venezuela expired, Maduro remained in power and waged a ceaseless campaign of violence, terror, and subversion against the United States of America, threatening not only our people, but the stability of the entire region. And you all saw it. In addition to trafficking gigantic amounts of illegal drugs that inflicted untold suffering and human destruction all over the country, all over, in particular, the United States, Maduro sent savage and murderous gangs, including the bloodthirsty prison gang, Tren de Aragua, to terrorize American communities nationwide. And he did.
They sure
indeed.
did.
They were in Colorado. They took over apartment complexes. They
Thanks
cut the
for Biden.
fingers off people if they called police. They were brutal, but they're not so brutal now. And I just have to congratulate our military, Pete, and everybody, and our National Guard, because the job that they've done, whether it's in Washington, D.C., where we have a totally safe city, where it was one of the most unsafe cities anywhere in the world, frankly, and now we have no crime in Washington, D.C. We haven't had a killing. We had the terrorist attack a few weeks ago. A little bit of a different kind of a threat, but we haven't had a killing in a long period of time, 6-7 months. We used to have two, on average, 2 a week in Washington, our capital. We don't have that anymore. The restaurants are opening. Everyone's happy. They're going, they're walking their daughters, they're walking their children, their wives. They walk to restaurants. Restaurants are opening all over Washington, D.C. So I want to thank the National Guard. I want to thank our military. And I want to thank law enforcement. It's been amazing. And they should do it with more cities. We're doing it, as you know, and we're doing it in Memphis, Tennessee right now, and crime is down. We've just sort of started a few weeks ago, but crime is down now 77%. And the governor of Louisiana called, great person, and he wanted us to help him, as you know, in a certain very nice part of Louisiana. And we have done that. And it was a rough section, and we have crime down. I understand it's down to almost nothing already after 2.5 weeks. New Orleans, it's down to almost nothing. And we've only been there for 2.5 weeks. Can't imagine why governors wouldn't want us to help. We also helped, as you know, in Chicago, and crime went down a little bit there. We did a very small help because we had no working ability with the governor. The governor was a disaster and the mayor was a disaster, but it knocked down crime. But we're pulling out of there. when they need us, we'll know. You'll know. You'll
Well, they
be
do
writing
have to
about
pull
it.
out because a judge
And likewise, Los
Supreme Court
Angeles, where we saved
told
Los
them they had
Angeles
to pull
early
out.
on, where the
Couldn't extend it.
head of the police department made a statement that if the federal government didn't come in, we would have lost Los Angeles. That's long after the fires. That's when they had the riots in Los Angeles. We did a great job. Got no credit for it whatsoever, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. We don't need the credit. But we'll be pulling out when they need us. They'll call, or we'll go back if we have to. We'll go back. But we did a great job in various cities. But the place that we're very proud of is Washington, D.C., because it's our nation's capital. We took it from being a crime-ridden mess to being one of the safest cities in the country. But the gangs that they sent raped, tortured, and murdered American women and children. They were in all of the cities I mentioned, Tren de Aragua. And they were sent by Maduro to terrorize our people. And now Maduro will never again be able to threaten an American citizen or anybody from Venezuela. There will no longer be threats. For years, I've highlighted the stories of those innocent Americans whose lives were so heartlessly robbed by this Venezuelan terrorist organization. Really one of the worst. One of the worst. They say the worst. Americans like 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungari from Houston. Beautiful Jocelyn Nungari. What happened to her? They, as you know, they kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered by Tren de Aragua animals. They murdered Jocelyn and left her dead under the bridge. There was a bridge that will never be the same to so many people after seeing what happened. As I've said many times, the Maduro regime emptied out their prisons, sent their worst and most violent monsters into the United States to steal American lives. And they came from mental institutions and insane asylums. They came from prisons and jails. The reason I say both, they sound similar. Actually, prisons, a little bit more hostile, a little bit tougher. A mental institution isn't as tough as an insane asylum, but we got them both. They sent from their mental institutions. They sent from their jails, prisons. They were drug dealers. They were drug kingpins. They sent everybody bad into the United States, but no longer. And we have now a border where nobody gets through. In addition, Venezuela unilaterally seized and stole American oil, American assets, and American platforms, costing us billions and billions of dollars. They did this a while ago, but we never had a president that did anything about it. They took all of our property. It was our property. We built it. And we never had a president that decided to do anything about it. Instead, they fought wars that were 10,000 miles away. We built Venezuela oil industry with American talent, drive, and skill. And the socialist regime stole it from us during those previous administrations, and they stole it through force. This constituted one of the largest thefts of American property in the history of our country. Considered the largest theft of property in the history of our country. Massive oil infrastructure was taken like we were babies, and we didn't do anything about it. I would have done something about it. America will never allow foreign powers to rob our people or drive us back into and out of our own hemisphere. That's what they did. Furthermore, under the now deposed dictator Maduro, Venezuela was increasingly hosting foreign adversaries in our region and acquiring menacing offensive weapons that could threaten U.S. interests and lives. And they used those weapons last night. Potentially in league with the cartels operating along our border. All of these actions were in gross violation of the core principles of American foreign policy, dating back more than 2 centuries. And
I wonder if you're going to take
not anymore.
the press.
All the way back, it dated to the Monroe Doctrines. And the Monroe Doctrine is a big deal, but we've superseded it by a lot, by a real lot. They now call it the Monroe Document. I don't know. It's Monroe Doctrine we sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't
You
forget
you
about
do
it
look
anymore.
sleepy.
Under our new national
Yeah.
security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Won't happen. So, just in concluding, for decades, other administrations have neglected or even contributed to these growing security threats in the Western Hemisphere. Under the Trump administration, we are reasserting American power in a very powerful way in our home region. And our home region is very different than it was just a short while ago. The future will be, and we did this in my first term. We had great dominance in my first term, and we have far greater dominance right now. Everyone's coming back to us. The future will be determined by the ability to protect commerce and territory and resources that are core to national security. These are core to our national security. Just like tariffs are, they've made our country rich, and they've made our national security strong, stronger than ever before. But these are the iron laws that have always determined global power. And we're going to keep it that way. We will secure our borders. We will stop the terrorists. We will crash the cartels, and we will defend our citizens against all threats, foreign and domestic. Other presidents may have lacked the courage or whatever to defend America, but I will never allow terrorists and criminals to operate with impunity against the United States. This extremely successful operation should serve as warning to anyone who would threaten American sovereignty or endanger American lives. Very importantly, the embargo on all Venezuelan oil remains in full effect. The American Armada remains poised in position, and the United States retains all military options until United States demands have been fully met and fully satisfied. All political and military figures in Venezuela should understand what happened to Maduro can happen to them, and it will happen to them if they aren't just, fair, even to their people. The dictator and terrorist, Maduro,
Stop it.
is finally
We
gone
don't
in
go to people's
Venezuela.
country because they're
People are
being
free.
treated badly. We
Free
don't
again.
go because we could get their
A long time for
resources.
them, but they're free. America is a safer nation. This morning, it's a prouder nation this morning because it didn't allow this horrible person and this country that was doing very bad things to us. It didn't allow it to happen. And the Western Hemisphere is right now a much safer place to be. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank General Raisin Kane. He's a fantastic man. I've worked with a lot of generals. I worked with some I didn't like. I worked with some I didn't respect. I worked with some that just weren't good. But this guy is fantastic. I watched last night one of the most precise attacks on sovereignty. I mean, it was an attack for justice. And I'm very proud of him. And I'm very proud of our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who I'm going to ask to say a few words. Thank you very much.
I don't like the way Pete talked at all. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Make it short.
Finally, a commander in chief the world respects and the American people deserve. And as the president said, words can barely capture the bravery and the power and the precision of this historic operation. A massive joint military and law enforcement raid flawlessly executed by the greatest Americans our country has to offer. American warriors are second to none, the best in the world and the best of our country. What all of us witnessed last night was sheer guts and grit, gallantry, and glory of the American warrior. I'm simply humbled by such men. And I tip my hat to our chairman, Dan Raisin Kane, and all those Americans.
He's an alcoholic.
Our warriors are the elite of America. And again,
that's what
President Trump has your back. No other country on planet Earth, and it's not even close, could pull this kind of operation off. And no other president has ever shown this kind of leadership, courage, and resolve, the most powerful combination the world has ever seen. As the president said, our adversaries remain on notice. America can project our will anywhere, anytime. The coordination, the stealth, the lethality, the precision, the very long arm of American justice, all on full display in the middle of the night. Nicolas Maduro had his chance, just like Iran had their chance, until they didn't and until he didn't. He effed around and he found out.
Oh, boy.
President Trump is deadly serious about stopping the flow of gangs and violence to our country, deadly serious about stopping the flow of drugs and poison to our people, deadly serious about getting back the oil that was stolen from us, and deadly serious about reestablishing American deterrence and dominance in the Western Hemisphere. This is about the safety, security, freedom, and prosperity of the American people. This is America first. This is peace through strength. And the United States War Department is proud to help deliver it. Welcome to 2026. And under President Trump, America is back.
The timing was
I'd like
planned.
to welcome now our chairman.
This was very
Raising
much
Cane,
intentional
have
to do
a
it
few more
during
details
this
about the
time,
operation.
to bring in the new year with, yeah.
Thank you. Thank
Off
you, Mr.
around
Secretary.
town,
Thank
find
you,
out.
Mr. President, and good morning. Last night, on the order of the President of the United States and in support of a request from the Department of Justice, as the President said, the United States military conducted an apprehension mission in Caracas, Venezuela, to bring to justice two indicted persons, Nicolas and Cecilia Maduro. This operation, known as Operation Absolute Resolve, was discreet, precise, and conducted during the darkest hours of January 2nd and was the culmination of months of planning and rehearsal, an operation that, frankly, only the United States military could undertake. What I'd like to do this morning is talk to you through some of the preparation and the details without compromising any of our tactics, techniques, and procedures. There is always a chance that we'll be tasked to do this type of mission again. Our interagency work began months ago and built on decades of experience of integrating complex air, ground, space, and maritime operations. While the past 2 decades have honed the skills of our special operations forces, this particular mission required every component of our joint force, with soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians working in unison with our intelligence agency partners and law enforcement teammates in an unprecedented operation. We leveraged our unmatched intelligence capabilities and our years of experience in hunting terrorists. And we could not have done this mission without the incredible work by various intelligence agencies, including the CIA, NSA, and NGA. We watched, we waited, we prepared, we remained patient and professional. This mission was meticulously planned, drawing lessons from decades of missions over the last many years, many missions over these last many years. This was an audacious operation that only the United States could do. It required the utmost of precision and integration within our joint force. And the word integration does not explain the sheer complexity of such a mission. An extraction so precise, it involved more than 150 aircraft launching across the Western Hemisphere in close coordination, all coming together in time and place to layer effects for a single purpose: to get an interdiction force into downtown Caracas while maintaining the element of tactical surprise. Failure of one component of this well-oiled machine would have endangered the entire mission, and failure is never an option for America's joint force. Those in the air over Caracas last night were willing to give their lives for those on the ground and in the helicopters. Let me talk a little bit about the preparation. After months of work by our intelligence teammates to find Maduro and understand how he moved, where he lived, where he traveled, what he ate, what he wore, what were his pets, in early December, our force was set pending a series of aligned events. Key was choosing the right day to minimize the potential for civilian harm and maximize the element of surprise and minimize the harm to the indicted personnel. So as the president said, they could be brought to justice. And as the president said earlier today, weather in Venezuela is always a factor this time of the year. And over the weeks through Christmas and New Year's, the men and women of the United States military sat ready, patiently waiting for the right triggers to be met and the president to order us into action. Last night, the weather broke just enough, clearing a path that only the most skilled aviators in the world could maneuver through. Ocean, mountain, low cloud ceilings. But when tasked with a mission, this organization does not quit. At 10:46 p.m. Eastern time last night, the president ordered the United States military to move forward with this mission. He said to us, and we appreciate it, Mr. President, good luck and Godspeed. And those words were transmitted to the entire joint force. Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night. Thousands and thousands of hours of experience were airborne. Our youngest crew member was 20, and our oldest crew member was 49. And there's simply no match for American military might. As the night began, the helicopters took off with the extraction force, which included law enforcement officers, and began their flight into Venezuela at 100 feet above the water. As they approached Venezuelan shores, the United States began layering different effects provided by Spacecom, Cybercom, and other members of the interagency to create a pathway. Overhead, those forces were protected by aircraft from the United States Marines, the United States Navy, the United States Air Force, and the Air National Guard. The force included F-22s, F-35s, F-18s, EA-18s, E-2s, B-1 bombers, and other support aircraft, as well as numerous remotely piloted drones. As the force began to approach Caracas, the Joint Air Component began dismantling and disabling the air defense systems in Venezuela, employing weapons to ensure the safe passage of the helicopters into the target area. The goal of our air component was, and always will be to protect the helicopters and the ground force and get them to the target and get them home.
He's
As the
talking too
force
damn much.
crossed the
Really?
last
We don't
point
care
of high
about all that?
terrain where they'd been hiding in the clutter, we assessed that we had maintained totally the element of surprise. As the helicopter force ingressed towards the objective at low level, we arrived at Maduro's compound at 1:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:01 a.m. Caracas local time. And the apprehension force descended into Maduro's compound and moved with speed, precision, and discipline towards their objective, and isolated the area to ensure the safety and security of the ground force while apprehending the indicted persons.
And the truth,
on arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit, but remained flyable. And as the president said earlier today, all of our aircraft came home, and that aircraft remained flyable during the rest of the mission.
But who was it hit by?
As the operation unfolded at the compound, our air and ground intelligence teams provided real-time updates to the ground force, ensuring those forces could safely navigate the complex environment without unnecessary risk. The force remained protected by overhead tactical aviation. Maduro and his wife, both indicted, gave up and were taken into custody by the Department of Justice, assisted by our incredible U.S. military with professionalism and precision, with no loss of U.S. life. After securing the indicted persons, the force began to prep for departure. Helicopters were called in to exfiltrate the extraction force, while fighter aircraft and remotely piloted aircraft provided overhead coverage and suppressive fire. There were multiple self-defense engagements as the force began to withdraw out of Venezuela. The force successfully exfiltrated and returned to their afloat launch bases, and the force was over the water at 3:29 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with indicted persons on board. And both Maduro and his wife were embarked aboard the USS Iwo Jima. In closing, what we've witnessed today is a powerful demonstration of America's joint force. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we debrief, we rehearse again and again, not to get it right, but to ensure that we cannot get it wrong. Our jobs are to integrate combat power so when the order comes, we can deliver overwhelming force at the time and the place of our choosing against any foe anywhere in the world. I am immensely proud today of our joint force and filled with gratitude to represent them here today. There is simply no mission too difficult for these incredible professionals and the families that stand by them and support them. As we stand here this morning, our forces remain in the region at a high state of readiness, prepared to project power, defend themselves, and our interests in the region. This operation is a testament to the dedication and unwavering commitment to justice and our resolve to hold accountable those who threaten peace and stability. In closing, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the brave men and women who executed this mission. Their courage and tireless commitment to our nation are what makes us strong. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Mr. President.
Oh my God, do we have to hear from Secretary of State now? Yeah.
Well, I don't have much to add to what you've heard now, other than the
Please
following
don't.
points. Nicolas Maduro was indicted in 2020 in the United States. He is not the legitimate president of Venezuela. That's not just us saying it. The first Trump administration, the Biden administration, the second Trump administration, none of those three recognized him. He's not recognized by the European Union and multiple countries around the world. He is a fugitive of American justice with a $50 million reward, which I guess we saved $50 million. And
Make sure.
yeah, exactly. But
Don't let anybody claim it. Nobody deserves it but us.
But I want to be clear about one thing. Nicolas Maduro had multiple opportunities to avoid this. He was provided multiple very, very, very generous offers and chose instead to act like a wild man, chose instead to play around. And the result is what we saw tonight.
Mark Rubio,
The
Secretary
following.
of State.
You have a guy, like many people around the world, they like to play games. You have a guy who decides he's going to invite Iran
I'm
into his
surprised, but
country.
he's very
going
good
to, do
at being
the
Secretary of State.
confiscation of American oil companies. He's going to flood our
Better than
country
being
with
a
gang
con-
members.
he's better at this
is-
than being
is
a
going to
congressman.
take Americans prisoner and try to hold them for hostage and trade them like he was able to do with the Biden administration. Basically likes to play games all this time and thinks nothing's going to happen. And I hope what people now understand is that we have a president. The 47th president of the United States is not a game player. When he tells you that he's going to do something, when tells you he's going to address a problem, he means it. He actions it. I can tell you, I've watched this process now for 14, 15 years, been around it. Everybody talks. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. When I get there, we're going to do this. We're going to take. This is a president of action. Like, I don't understand yet how they haven't figured this out. And now, if you don't know, now you know. Because this is the way it's going to play out. And I think people need to understand that this is not a president that just talks and does letters and press
Marco
conferences.
Rubio.
And, if he says he's serious about something, he means it. And this is something that was a direct threat to the national interest of the United States. And the president addressed it. There's a president of peace, by the way. I told you what I just said earlier. This guy had multiple opportunities to find his way somewhere else and figure out another. He could have been living somewhere else right now, very happy. But instead, he wanted to play big boy. And so now, he's got other sets of problems on his hands. And but I think that the message here should be for the world. Look, the president doesn't go out looking for people to pick fights with. He's not generally wants to get along with everybody. We'll talk and meet with anybody, but don't play games. Don't play games with this president's in office because it's not going to turn out well. And so I hope that, I guess that lesson was learned last night, and we hope it'll be instructive moving forward.
Oh. I want to know too, honey. I better leave Cuba alone. I like Cuba.
Please. Well, we're going to be running it with a group, and we're going to make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil companies directly. They will be reimbursed for what they're doing, but that's going to be paid. And we're going to get the oil flowing the way it should be. As you know, it was just a minor flow. It was actually a minor flow for what they have. But we're going to run it properly, and we're going to make sure the people of Venezuela are taken care of. We're going to make sure the people that were forced out of Venezuela by this thug are also taken care of.
President, does the U.S. running the country mean that U.S. troops will be on the ground? How will that work?
Well, you know, they always say boots on the ground. Oh, so we're not afraid of boots on the ground if we have to have. We had boots on the ground last night at a very high level, actually. We're not
I had
afraid
that
of
many
it.
boots on the
We
ground.
don't mind saying it.
We need to have a
But
lot of
we're going to make sure that that country is run properly. We're not doing this in vain. This is a very dangerous attack. This is an attack that could have gone very, very badly. Could have gone very badly. We could have lost a lot of people last night. We could have lost a lot of dignity. We could have lost a lot of equipment. The equipment is less important, but we could have lost a lot. And we're going to make sure that this is
like
proper.
communism.
We're there now.
But Cuba is
We're ready to go again if we have to.
socialist
We're
country.
going to run the country right. It's going to be run very judiciously, very fairly. It's going to make a lot of money. We're going to give money to the people. We're going to reimburse people that were taken advantage of. We're going to take care of everybody. It's very important. We couldn't let them get away with it. You know, they stole our oil. We built that whole industry there, and they just took it over like we were nothing. And we had a president that decided not to do anything about it. So we did something about it. We're late, but we did something about it. Yeah, please.
Mechanism by which you're going to run the country? Are you going to designate a U.S. official
Yes,
to
yes.
coordinate?
It's
Can you
all
just
being
unpack that?
done right now. We're designating people. We're talking to people. We're designating various people, and we're going to let you know who those people are.
Would run Venezuela.
Well, it's largely going to be for a period of time. The people that are standing right behind me. We're going to be running it. We're going to be bringing it back. It's a dead. You know, I talk about a dead country. A year and a half ago, we were a dead country. Now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We're a country doing better than any country anywhere in the world. And it required leadership. Venezuela has
I want them to ask
a
them.
lot of bad people in there,
I
a
want
lot
to
of
know what
bad
you want to say about
people that
Cuba.
shouldn't be leading. We're not going to take a chance that one of those people take over for Maduro. So you can look at, and others. We have fantastic people, including people in the military. So we're going to have a group of people running it until such time as it can be put back on track, make a lot of money for the people, and give people a great way of life, and also reimbursement for people in our country that were forced out of Venezuela.
Rubio would be.
You said earlier today that you weren't going to back Machado to come back and be the opposition leader in your Fox and Friends interview. And then you also mentioned the vice president of Venezuela. Are you going to work with the vice president of Venezuela, or how do you foresee the relationship
Well, I
going?
understand she was just sworn in, but she was, as you know, picked by Maduro. So Marco's working on that directly. He just had a conversation with her, and she's essentially willing to do what we think is necessary to make Venezuela great again. Very simple.
Make Venezuela.
Mr. President, Colombian President Gustavo Petro, a couple weeks ago, he said he's got to watch his ass. And today he said he's not concerned about anything happening to him in the aftermath of this operation. So just what your message is
Well,
about
he
that.
has cocaine mills. He has factories where he makes cocaine. And yeah, I think I stick by my first statement. He's making cocaine. They're sending it into the United States. So he does have to watch his ass.
Mr. President, did you notify any members of Congress in advance?
Marco, do you want to talk about that? Because you were involved.
Sure. We call members of Congress immediately after. This was not the kind of mission that you can do congressional notification on. It was a trigger-based mission in which conditions had to be met night after night. We watched and monitored that for a number of days. So it's just simply not the kind of mission you can call people and say, hey, we may do this at some point in the next 15 days. But it's largely a law enforcement function. Remember, at the end of the day, at its core, this was an arrest of 2 indicted fugitives of American justice, and the Department of War supported the Department of Justice in that job. Now, there are broader policy implications here, but it's just not the kind of mission that you can pre-notify because it endangers the mission.
Plus, if I could add one thing to that,
And
Congress has a tendency to leak.
Right.
This would not be good. If they leaked, General, I think it would have been maybe a very different result. But I have to say, they knew we were coming at some point. You know, we had a lot of ships out there. They sort of knew we were coming. We went through. But Congress will leak, and we don't want leakers.
People to watch this all play out live. What was Maduro doing when the U.S. forces entered what I assume would be his home? And also, was there any point where the U.S. was considering if Maduro pushed back or resisted killing Maduro?
It could have happened. It could have happened. He was trying to get into a safe place. You know, the safe place is all steel. And he wasn't able to make it to the door because our guys were so fast. They went through the opposition so fast. And there was a lot of opposition. You know, people were wondering, do we get them by surprise? Sort of surprised, but they were waiting for something. It was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of gunfire. You saw some of it today. But he was trying to get to a safe place, which wasn't safe because we would have had the door blown up in about 47 seconds, they say on average, regardless of how thick the steel was. It was a very thick door. It was a very heavy door, but he was unable to get to that door. He made it to the door. He was unable to close it. Go ahead, finish.
To be in the time being right now. Do you know his exact
Well,
whereabouts?
eventually, ultimately, in the near future, he's going to be brought to New York.
And where is he going to be held? Where is he going to be held in New York? Do you know?
That's going to be up to the officials that do these things.
Mr. President, the U.S. has something of a mixed track record of ousting dictators without necessarily a plan for what comes afterwards.
Not with
Did
me.
that weigh on your decision?
Well, that's when we had different presidents, but with me, that's not true. With me, we've had a perfect track record of winning. We win a lot, and we win. If you look at Soleimani, you look at al-Baghdadi, you look at the Midnight Hammer. Midnight Hammer was incredible. Right now, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. We have essentially peace in the Middle East because of that. If you didn't, if we weren't successful with Midnight Hammer, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. So, with me, you've had a lot of victory. You've had only victories. You've had no losses. Yeah.
How long do you expect the U.S. to run Venezuela, and how soon do you want Venezuelan people to hold elections?
So I'd like to do it quickly, but it takes a period of time. You know, we're rebuilding. We have to rebuild their whole infrastructure. The infrastructure is rotted. It's actually very dangerous. It's blow up territory. Oil is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing to take out of the ground. It can kill a lot of people. It has killed a lot of people doing just that. The infrastructure is old. It's rotted. Much of it is stuff that we put there 25 years ago, and we're going to be replacing it. And we're going to take a lot of money out so that we can take care of the country. Yeah.
Are you saying that Secretary Rubio and
Mr. President, China, Russia, and Iran have interests in Venezuela. How does this operation affect your relationships with them when
Well,
it
in
comes
terms
to
of
oil and
China
drugs?
and Russia, Russia, when we get things straightened out. But in terms of other countries that want oil, we're in the oil business. We're going to sell it to them. We're not going to say we're not going to give it. In other words, we'll be selling oil probably in much larger doses because they couldn't produce very much because their infrastructure was so bad. So we'll be selling large amounts of oil to other countries, many of whom are using it now.
And there you
but I
have
would
it.
say many more will come.
Are you saying, Mr. President, are you
to the people of
saying that,
Venezuela?
One
Mr.
second,
President,
please.
are
Go
you
ahead
saying
behind
that?
you, please.
Mr. President, thank you. What is your message to the people of Venezuela today? Of course, the civilian population specifically, they have a lot of questions. What is your message to the people of
That
Venezuela?
you're going to have peace, justice. You're going to have some of the riches that you should have had for a long period of time. It was stolen from you. But you're going to have peace and you're going to have safety. You're going to have justice. You're
We are
going to have a
not going
country.
to war
You're
with
going to have a
China
real
and
country.
Russia
You're going to have
because there's
potentially a
more
great
money
country.
right
You know,
there to be
if you
made.
go back 20 years, maybe even a little longer ago, that was a great country. And they destroyed it. Remember, I said that if we lose this election, the United States will be Venezuela on steroids. That's what would have happened. Had we lost the election, the 2024 election, we suffered so badly. When you look at the border from 2020, what they did, what Joe Biden administration did to our country should never be forgotten. But if we had to go through another year of that, we would be exactly where Venezuela was in terms. I used to say, if they win, we're going to be Venezuela on steroids. And that's what would have happened.
President, thank you. Are you saying that Secretary Hegseth and Rubio are going to be running Venezuela? And will you be sending in U.S. military
They're going
troops
to be a
to provide?
team that's working with the people of Venezuela to make sure that we have Venezuela right. Because for us to just leave, who's going to take over? I mean, there is nobody to take over. You have a vice president who's been appointed by Maduro. And right now she's the vice president, and she's, I guess, the president. She was sworn in as president just a little while ago. She had a long conversation with Marco, and she said, "We'll do whatever you need." I think she was quite gracious, but she really doesn't have a choice. We're going to have this done right. We're not going to just do this with Maduro, then leave like everybody else, leave and say, let it go to hell. If we just left, it has zero chance of ever coming back. We'll run it properly. We'll run it professionally. We'll have the greatest oil companies in the world go in and invest billions and billions of dollars and take out money, use that money in Venezuela. And the biggest beneficiary are going to be the people of Venezuela. And also, I can't stress this strongly enough.
They're gonna have a
the people that
Trump
got thrown out of Venezuela,
golf course in
that are now in the
Venezuela.
United States. And frankly, some want to stay and some probably want to go back. Yeah.
In the country, and were any of the detained Americans?
Well, right now they're
arrested
very
last night?
protected because nobody's going to mess with us. They're very protected. The people of, and we let them know that you better not touch one of them.
And are you concerned that bad elements of the Maduro regime will remain in place?
Well, we know who they are. We're on them, and they're acting much differently now than they would have acted 2 days ago. Okay, wait, behind you, please.
Mr. President, why is running a country in South America America first?
Well, I think it is because we want to surround ourselves with good neighbors. We want to surround ourselves with stability. We want to surround ourselves with energy. We have tremendous energy in that country. It's very important that we protect it. We need that for ourselves. We need that for the world. And we want to make sure we can.
Thank you for that, press. Dana, Miss Dana, you all talk over people. Please wait. Your sound system is making it understand you. Okay.
Not been a very good one for Cuba. The people there have suffered for many, many years. And I think Cuba is going to be something we'll end up talking about because Cuba is a failing nation right now, very badly failing nation. And we want to help the people. It's very similar in the sense that we want to help the people in Cuba, but we want to also help the people that were forced out of Cuba and living in this country. Do you want to say something about that, Marco, please?
Well, I mean, I just gave you a statement a few minutes ago about, when the president speaks, you should take him seriously. So suffice it to say, Cuba is a disaster. It's run by incompetent, senile men, and in some cases, not senile, but incompetent nonetheless. It has no economy. It's in total collapse. And by the way, they were, all of the guards that helped protect Maduro, this is well known, their whole spy agency, all that were full of Cubans. I mean, it's amazing. This poor island took over Venezuela in some cases. One of the biggest problems the Venezuelans have is they have to declare independence from Cuba that tried to basically colonize it from a security standpoint. So, yeah, look, if I lived in Havana and I was in the government, I'd be concerned, at least a little bit. Well, the president already announced a week ago that anything that's sanctioned, it's sanctioned oil, it's not going to be allowed to get there. So that's a pre-existing.
The answer is yes. Yes. No, we haven't. No, we haven't.
Mr. President. Okay, so I need to mute. I'm sorry, guys. Yes, I forgot. If I'm talking and they're talking, you won't hear me. Sorry about that.
Or the respect within the country. She's a very nice woman, but she doesn't have the respect.
Mr. President, is it possible that the U.S. ends up administrating Venezuela for years?
Well, it won't cost us anything because the money coming out of the ground is very substantial. So it's not going to cost us anything. We will. Well, we want safety there. We want to be surrounded by countries that aren't housing all of our enemies all over the world. That's what that was happening. And you don't want to have that. But we're going to be rebuilding and we're not spending money. The oil companies are going to go in. They're going to spend money. We're going to take back the oil that, frankly, we should have taken back a long time ago. A lot of money is coming out of the ground. We're going to get reimbursed for all of that. We're going to get reimbursed for everything that we spend. So it's going to be a very important. This is a very big evening that took place last night. We have to be surrounded by safe, secure countries. And we also have to have energy, very important. We have to have energy that's real energy, not where they're getting 4% and 5% of the energy out of the ground. You take a look, it was such a disaster. So what's going to happen with Venezuela, I think, over the next period of a year is going to be a great thing. And the people of Venezuela will be the biggest beneficiaries.
Going to send in the
U.S.
military.
Mr. President, thank you. What did you last speak to Maduro about when you spoke? And is the
Well,
U.S.
I don't want to
at
get
war
into
with
the
Venezuela?
conversations, but I did have conversations with him, and I said, you got to surrender. And I actually thought he was pretty close to doing so, but now he wished he did, yeah.
You said that Maduro is responsible for drug trafficking. You recently pardoned the former president of Honduras who was convicted of many drug trafficking. Can you explain how these two situations are
Well,
different? And would you ever
yeah,
pardon Maduro?
I endorsed, as you know, the winning president, the man who won in Honduras. I endorsed the man who won in Chile. I endorsed the man who won in Argentina. And we are doing very well with that whole group. What the man that I pardoned was, if you could equate it to us, he was treated like the Biden administration treated a man named Trump. That didn't work out too well for them. This was a man who was persecuted very unfairly. He was the head of the country. He was persecuted very unfairly. And there are a number of them. And we felt that it was a very unfair situation that happened to him. He's also a party member of the man who won. So obviously the people liked what I did. And one of the reasons that was done is because of the fact that the party in power felt very strongly that that man was treated very badly. I studied it very quickly, and then I studied it in great detail. I went to a lot of the people standing behind me, and they felt that that man was persecuted and treated very badly. That's why I gave him a pardon.
You referenced boots on the ground earlier. Can you just sort of button this up? Do you envision the U.S. military having a presence in Venezuela as the U.S. runs that
Well,
country?
no, we're going to have a presence in Venezuela as it pertains to oil, because we have to have, we're sending our expertise in. So you may need something, not very much. But no, we're going to be taking out a tremendous amount of wealth out of the ground. And that wealth is going to the people of Venezuela and people from outside of Venezuela that used to be in Venezuela. And it goes also to the United States of America in the form of reimbursement for the damages caused us by that country. So I want to thank you all very much. Thank you. Do you have one? Yes, please. You were so nice before. I'm going to give you the final question. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Mr.
Unless it's a
President.
bad question, in
It's
which
about
case I'll
Putin.
go one word. It's about who?
It's about Putin. If you want
About Putin. Well, that's always nice
You had
to
a
talk
phone.
about Putin.
You had a phone call with him
Yeah.
on Monday. Did he talk at all about Maduro? Did y'all talk about this?
No, we didn't.
And
We
then-
never spoke about Maduro.
Are you mad at him right now? I mean, there's this
I'm not
intelligence.
thrilled with Putin. I'm not thrilled with Putin. He's killing too many people. I thought that would be so. I settled 8 1/4 war. You know what the 1/4 was? Thailand and Cambodia. I did it again. They broke out, and I did it in about 5 hours, and I settled it. I'm giving myself 1/4, so I'm up to now 8 1/4. In other words, I settled the war, but then they broke out. They had a pretty bad breakout over the last 4 days. I got them to go back to peace. So I only give 1/4. I thought the easiest one would be, one of the easier ones would be Russia, Ukraine. It's not. And they both have done some pretty bad things. And look, that's Biden's war. That's not my war. But I want to stop the lives. Did you see where last month, 30,000, it was 27,000 the month before. 30,000, mostly soldiers, were killed this last month. 30,000. I want to stop that. You know, I got NATO to pay 5% instead of the 2% that they weren't paying. They weren't paying 2%, now they pay 5%. And we send them a lot of munitions. We send them a lot of things, missiles and various other things, a lot. And they pay. The United States is not losing money. We're probably making money on that. It's the last thing I care about. I just want to stop all those people. We're losing 25, 30,000 human beings that come from two places that are very far away. But if I can stop, because it's something I've been pretty good at doing, deals, I guess. It's all a deal. Life is a big deal. But if I can stop that war and stop 30,000 young people, in addition to the fact that people are being killed in Kiev, people are being killed in other cities throughout, a much smaller number, but they're being killed, viciously killed. So I'm not happy about it. I thought that would be something that would get solved. We have Mr. Witkoff here. I think that we're making progress, but that's a war that should have never happened. If I were president, it would have never happened. Putin says it. Everybody says it. If I were president, that would have never happened. But I inherited that war. That was Joe Biden Zelensky and Putin. I came into the situation and it's a mess. And I will say this, I watched an operation last night that was so precise, that was so brilliant. I mean, it was incredible. If we had our people like this general and our people involved, that war would not have gone on very long, that I can tell you. That war, to use an old term, that war has become a bloodbath, and we want it to get stopped. Thank you very much, everybody.
All right. There we have it. So actually, let me make myself a little bit bigger. Guys, I dropped the link if you want to join the show. Oh, honey, you can see the grays coming in. I dropped the link. And this is not a large crowd. Let's see. How can I? This is not a large crowd out, and this is in Caracas, Venezuela. Yeah. So if you guys want to hop in to make some comments, please do so. Let me actually pin the link real quick. Pin it. And I want to go to some of the comments. Thank you, Maura Massa. I wonder if, I said this. I don't know who that person is. This was funny, Deborah. Will Mandandi greet Mandora, because he's headed to New York, right? He's headed to New York. So will he greet Mandandi in New York? That's a good one. And it was interesting what they said about Cuba. First of all, Cuba has an embargo. If you lift the embargo, let's see how the economy goes. I'm pretty sure the economy will improve if you lift the embargo. Thank you, Walter. Happy New Year to you and your family, along with Judge Joe Brown. Health, prosperity, live strong, blessings, Brooklyn via Trinidad. Thank you. Happy New Year to you and yours. Delta Force off the coast of Caracas. We came, we saw, we destroyed, power, skill, strength, period. Yes. I'm a retired Marine. They didn't do all that, but they did go in like a thief in the night, probably at 2 a.m. See, that is the conversation I think we need to start having, right? That is the conversation we need to start having. Because you're a Marine, honey, you know how these operations operate as a Marine. And I appreciate you commenting. Big hurtification. I didn't think it was all that either. It wasn't like invading Iran and trying to topple their president. You know, this was pretty, because you were already bombing them. And then it's Venezuela. Like, their military is no match for ours. You could send our National Guards over there and we could, still win a war with them. So I believe you. Elon gonna have Starlink on lock. Yes, it's about money. It is about money. It's all about the money here. It's all about the money. If they have another Paul Bremer in charge of governance in Venezuela, it would be a disaster. FYI, Bremer was the head guy in charge of Iraq when Saddam was ousted. He was terrible and allowed insurgency. Yeah, I don't know who that person is, but Iraq is a hot mess right now. Yeah. It's like when we go in and topple somebody's president or leader, that country tends to be a shithole afterwards. So hopefully Venezuela don't do that. Hopefully Trump will stand by what he just said. The money, we're taking over the oil. We'll be selling the oil, continue to sell it to China and Russia. That money will go to the people of Venezuela. Are you going to let that money go back into the economy of Venezuela? If you want a better country, leaders should start with not lying. Absolutely. They're all liars. Democrat, Republicans, Green Party, independent, communists, socialists, it doesn't matter. They're all liars. They are. Okay, sorry about the sound earlier. Thank you. Leave Cuba alone. Nobody's complaining. What happened to America first? Lift the embargo, and you'll see an improvement in Cuba's economy. But they're not going to do that because Trump, it's about money. And where Cuba is situated, 90 miles off the coast of Florida, that is the vacation heaven for American hotels, Trump golf course. I'm pretty sure he will probably put a Mar-a-Lago in Cuba. It is about money and profit and capitalism. Trump, how would you know that your actions in Venezuela would be a big mess as well? And I think only time would tell when it comes to Venezuela. Now, I don't see anybody I guess y'all don't feel like coming up, and that's fine. Because I'm about to start my day as well. If anybody believes the U.S. is taking oil from Venezuela and giving it back to the country, you're a fool. Yeah, and you know what? And I have reservations about that as well because politicians lie. You know, you didn't go in there to help the people of Venezuela. You went in there to fatten your pockets, to make sure that Elon gets, Starlink. What is this? To make sure Elon gets, his Starlink extended. And other, what is that? What is that company that start with a P? He got like $1 billion trillion contract from the government as well. Pilar something. The Democrats were okay. Stop blaming everything on Trump. The Democrats were in power for how many years? They could have did it. Well, here's the thing, right? Because here's my question. If Kamala was president, she wouldn't have invaded Venezuela because they're the ones who opened up the border and let the people come here. And they knew that Maduro was opening up the prisons. So this was already in motion. Now, if the Biden administration was not supporting Maduro, this was inevitable. They knew that the United States was going to take down the president of Venezuela. Biden couldn't do it when he was president because he was senile. If Kamala was president, she probably would have did it so that she could look like she's competent. Maybe wouldn't have been as soon. But you let all these illegals from Venezuela come in, right? Because the Democrats was just saying, well, let's just let the people that are suffering come into this country. Trump is like, no, keep them out this country. Let's go and take down their president, take down their leadership, take over their oil, and help their country out. But they don't need to be coming here illegally. So, yeah, the Democrats, I don't know. A lot of times Democrats and Republicans leaders, they're on the same page, but their execution is different. It's a different type of execution. China, Russia, and Iran no longer have influence in Venezuela. Brilliant move by yeah. And see, right. This is like a chess game because China, Russia, even Iran, they were buying resources from Venezuela. That's what kept Venezuela afloat. That is what mind you, Cuba was sponsored by Russia before the Russian economy collapsed. What was that, in the 80s? And then Cuba went through their special period. And then Venezuela came in to help Cuba out. Venezuela also traded oil with Russia and China. So they were doing business with American adversaries. So if you control the main resource in Venezuela, or resources, oil and other things in Venezuela, take out the president. We didn't like him anyway. He wasn't on our side. Put somebody in president who was on our side, put somebody in power position in Venezuela who's on America's side. But we are the ones that's going to be in control of your oil and other resources. So we set the price of how much we're going to allow, how much we're going to charge China and Russia. So it is about having power over your adversaries and also making money. It's about the dollar. Cuba was Las Vegas before Las. Yes, they called Cuba the whorehouse of the Western Hemisphere because, first of all, the mob was there like crazy. Drugs, prostitution, racism, discrimination. Under Baptista was a horrible ruler in Cuba. He was worse than Fidel. I would rather have lived under Fidel Castro's government regime than Baptista. See, people forget what it was like under Baptista for the Cuban people, especially if you were dark and Afro-Cuban. So the history here in America is like white people, discriminating and suppressing black people. Well, in Cuba, they were all Cuban, but you had the light-skinned Cubans, the Cubans you see in Miami. They owned everything, the land, the businesses, and they had the darker Cubans, the Afro-Cubans, as the workers, as the indentured servants, as before that, the slaves, right? So even after slavery, when you're talking about discrimination and racism, they weren't educated, the darker Cubans. They weren't allowed to go in certain areas, certain parks. They were kept at the bottom of the economic mobility in Cuba. So Cuba wasn't great under Baptista before Fidel. That's why even to this day, especially the older generation, still loves and praise Fidel Castro. They wanted him to come in there and take down Baptista. And then the U.S., the Bay of Pigs, they kicked the U.S. ass twice. That's why they issued an embargo, because Russia tried to put some weapons over there facing us as well. But that's one of the main reasons why whoever is president can never say, okay, let's make peace with Cuba, because Cuba is one country that actually defeated American military. You don't let that go. So Trump is squeezing the economy of Cuba to where, I don't want to say this, but I wouldn't be surprised if eventually, probably in a year or two, they're on the brink of famine, because Venezuela was their number one backer, not just for oil, but for food and goods and resources and everything. So Trump is squeezing the life out of Cuba. It's not about going in there with military. No. It is about making sure they don't have any economic power. Your friends can't help you, because we are controlling the resources. We are controlling what comes in and what comes out of your country in Cuba by way of Venezuela and anyone else. You have nowhere to go but to surrender. So a lot of times it's not about going in with weapons, and shooting or killing. It's not about military action. It is about economic war. Crush your opponent economically, financially, and you win. You get what you want. And that is what Trump is doing with Cuba. Because mind you, remember Obama, the embargo was still in place, but he eased the travel restrictions. And when he did that, for those 2 years in Cuba, Americans flooded over to Cuba for vacation. Their economy increased overnight because of the Americans going over there. A lot of business owners, a lot of people created businesses when President Obama eased up the travel restrictions for Americans in Cuba. But then when Trump came in, he cut all that out. And then the economy tanked. So Trump is about the money. And a lot of times you could win a war, or you could win over your adversaries by financially bankrupting them. but all of that I would do in a deeper dive in another show. Them Cubans still mad they got kicked out of the country. Yeah. And it's like, but those were the Cubans of means. They were the upper class and the wealthy and the rich, and it's a little bit of the middle class. But they were the ones that benefited under Batista. And then the people that stayed were the ones that were oppressed. That's why Black Americans here in America, we not only sympathize or empathize with Cuba, but support Cuba because we know what it's like to be oppressed. I'm going to do a deep dive on what was life like under the regime of Batista. Because even if you take out, okay, the racial discrimination in Cuba under Batista, he was killing a lot of his citizens. So let's not paint this or romanticize, oh, Fidel was so evil, he destroyed Cuba, as if what they had before was so wonderful. No. The mob, the shit. If Fidel never came in to take over Cuba, the mob would be controlling Cuba in every way, in all industries. Yeah, colorism was heavy. You know, listen, it is a socialist country, Cuba. It's not a communist. It's more of a socialist country. We have socialism in this country a little bit, but at the end of the day, it is about capitalism. Cuba do practice capitalism as well, but there is a socialist country because everything is state owned, and that is a problem. Whether it's your home, your business, it's as if, okay, I open up a business in Cuba, but my profit is going to the government and they're going to kick back me a percentage. No, that's part of socialism. Under Batista, Cuba was under the thumb of the U.S. military, the mafia, and American companies. Yeah. So, and that's with all that capitalism, with all that money, with all that corruption, the people of Cuba was suffering. Now, if you were white Cuban, the ones you see in Miami, they were making a lot of money. They were still benefiting. They had generational wealth. So let's and I'm not paraphrasing, but I'm just making this a short conversation. I'm not doing a deep dive, but I've visited Cuba. I was there for 10 days, and I do want to go back. The people in Cuba are wonderful, beautiful people, nice people. The culture is wonderful, the food, everything. The people of Cuba makes Cuba wonderful. The government, and that's what anywhere you go, we always have an issue with government. I'm not saying Fidel was perfect. No, he did some messed up stuff too. But if you had to choose between Batista and Fidel, Fidel was the better choice. But Mark Rubio, his parents, they were the wealthy ones from Cuba that were allowed to come into Florida, Miami, and the American government gave them all types of economic upward mobility resources. What did it say? He was an actor the U.S. put in over there, but he really took it over and pushed the U.S. out. No. Not Fidel, no. Oh, there's always a fucking hater on a Saturday. No, I'm going to keep talking Ebonics, honey. Why you got that girl Greta? Ooh, honey, that crazy little... Is she a young woman now? No, it's not communist. It's socialist. Cuba almost got glassed by JFK. Well, shit, we almost got glassed by Cuba via the Russian missiles. Must we? Well, I wasn't born then in the 60s when this was going on. But that generation, the baby boomers, you guys experienced this. The kids in school, you had to be taught drills. You would have drills to where, okay, we're having a practice drill. Get under your desk because Cuba missiles could hit us in at any moment. You guys had to deal with that. So America was on high alert. If it's about money and drugs, why don't Mexico get any smoke? Exactly. He said Mexico was next. In what capacity, honey? In what capacity? So, and this is where it's a lot of lies. You know, we don't know what's truth, what's lies, but it's a lot of lies there because you're saying Mexico is next. In what capacity? The cartels have Congress, judges, American judges on a federal, state, level. They have a whole bunch of people on their payroll. And it's not going to stop. A lot of people who are head of cartels, they also have legitimate businesses, i.e. the oil business. That show, Landman, honey, I love that show because a lot of things that they display and talk about in that show, is accurate. So I don't, why are we, and here's the problem that I have with Americans as a mass, as a collective, the average American, you actually believe what your president and what these politicians are saying are truthful. You actually believe everything these people say. No matter what political party. And that's a problem. A lot of Americans, we are not educated when it comes to history or geopolitics. You don't have to be an intellect, but we need to start looking at the good and the bad of everything. Thanks for setting a record on Cuba, but people are still going to run with the whole communist. Yeah, they are. Because they have not researched, read, or even been to Cuba. I want people, this is homework, and for me too, because I am going to do a deep dive. Do your research on Cuba under Batista and under Fidel, and then come to your own conclusion. Forget about the United States. Just do your research under Batista when he was ruling Cuba, and do your research under Fidel Castro when he was ruling Cuba, and you come with the conclusion of who was the better leader of Cuba, because there's no such thing as a perfect leader. They're all liars. They're all corrupt everywhere in the world. I'm trying to, I still could tell you. Wait, here we go. Hi, Katalia. Happy Saturday. I'm about to get up out of here. So I dropped the link, but nobody didn't want to come up. That's fine. Do my homework on what, honey? Do your homework, Dana. Do my homework on what? I think I'm more versed to talk about Cuba than you are. Do my homework on what? To understand that Baptista was a dictator. He was horrible. So don't sit up here and put in my comment section, do my homework, and you're not even backing up on what I need to do my homework on. Because you may disagree with what I'm saying. That doesn't mean what I'm saying is not factual. That Baptista was a dictator. Baptista was killing his citizens. He implemented discrimination. He implemented a caste system, or he kept it going. He was corrupt. He was doing business with the mafia. Compare Cuba with actual socialist country like Sweden. Cuba is communist. Who told you Sweden was a socialist country? Thank you. And Sweden doesn't have an embargo. But this is a good conversation to have. We got to start having the Cuban discussions, because there's always, it's like a 50-50. Like half of America sympathizes and support Cuba, especially the Cuban people. Then the other half don't like Cuba, don't support it. So it's a good conversation to have. Hi from Chicago, South Side. Hi, Lynette. Anything else? Listen, Trump, how would you know that your action in Venezuela will be a big mess as well? Right. Under Baptista, Cuba was under the thumb of the U.S. military, the mafia, American companies. Yes, I did share that. Exactly. If it's about money and drugs, why don't Mexico? Yeah, I saw that. Okay, I just want to make sure I got through the super chats. And I did. Thank you so much, guys, for the lovely super chats. I appreciate you guys. We don't always have to agree, and that's fine. But honey, y'all can't really tell me much about Cuba. I'm never gonna be on the side of a Mark Rubio and people like him. I'm never gonna be on the side of the Cubans that came here and that are pissed at Fidel. And honestly, Fidel, he could have slaughtered them, but he said, listen, if you don't want to be here, leave. He said this to all of the wealthy, upper class and middle class white Cubans who they check off white here. They don't check off Hispanic. They don't check off Latino. They check off white here, the Cubans here, the white ones. Fidel said, go. Because we're taking over your business, your land. Yeah, he took it from him. He took it from him because he was in sole control. That is part of socialism. That is why people are upset that Mandandi is the mayor. Well, people outside of New York, because majority of New York voted for him. So you have a government-run society. The government controls your education, your business, your housing, your healthcare is all government-owned. It's no private sector. That is what socialism is about. Everything is government-run. So he told those wealthy Cubans, I'm taking your shit. Now you could stay, but you ain't gonna like being here. So I'm letting you get on a plane and get the fuck up out of Cuba. And America said, come over here, guys. We're gonna give you business loans. We're gonna give you home loans. We're gonna give you all types of, resources so you could set up shop here. And they did. And RIP to Assata Shakur, honey. Yeah. Castro's hand was forced by an ally with Soviets. He tried to negotiate with the United States and they didn't want to hear it. That too. So again, listen, thank you guys. Yeah, he took over their shit. I wouldn't like him either. If I'm living high in a hog and you come in and say, oh, you own this now, I'll be pissed forever, for life. And I'm going to support the country that is against you, which is the United States. And what is that? I forgot the name of the company. I got to do my I forgot the name of the company. And they said it's the Cuban cigar. It's a famous Cuban cigar company. That's not real Cuban cigar. It's not. And I'll explain on that when I do a deep dive into Cuba. I would. If I could own property in Cuba, I would. It's hard I don't have any relatives in Cuba, so I can't own property in Cuba because of the Cuban government. But I would definitely want to own property in Cuba and live there 6 months out of the year. Because again, I'm coming in with money, American money. So if you have money, you can have all of the necessities that we have here, whether internet, cars, whatever. So yes, I would. I've actually I visited. I didn't stay in a hotel. I stayed in an apartment. So there were some things that we are not used to because we have that they don't. But it was also refreshing to not be plugged into the matrix all the time. But if you have money, or you could live lovely in Cuba till this day. So me going to Cuba, living there now, if I could, I will be living a different life than someone who was born and raised in Cuba. So you can't say that to American, oh, go to Cuba and live there. Yeah, I don't mind going there because I'm still, I would live better there than I would here. Because I'm an American coming there. My economic status is, more better than majority of the Cubans there. So it's all about money at the end of the day. You can't tell an American, oh, go to Cuba and live there and you're a C. They're going to live well. And have wonderful weather and wonderful beaches year round, great food. Stop. There's not going to be military banging down my door. What are you doing? A damn dog twisted in the sheets. So yeah, like you could, even if I wasn't go to Venezuela, I'm not living like the average Venezuelan here. When America goes to these other countries, we live well because we're coming already with money. We're coming already with an economic advantage. But I'm telling you, Cuba, it's a beautiful country. It's very romantic, but the people makes Cuba wonderful. It's the people. It's always been the people. So yeah, y'all saying go live there. I don't got a problem. But you gotta understand that America, our government here prohibit us from, well, Robert Redford owned property there, but again, he's wealthy, so you have connections. The government there don't allow us to buy property. We can't buy a house there. If I have a relative there, then I will be able to buy property through them. But it's like that in other countries too. I can't go to Mexico and buy property there. I have to have a relative in Mexico already to do that. So yeah, I'm telling you, get off TV. Sometimes you got to cut your TV off, get your passport, and go to another country and see it for yourself firsthand. Now, again, honestly, because I said I said that I'm about to end the show, but I am going to have I'm gonna do like a video, and I do want to have a live show specifically talking about Cuba because Cuba is depleted. It is run down. What do they do for the people? So because they have an embargo, that embargo does it makes the economy horrible. They have a lot of rundown business buildings. And so going there for the first time, it's like you step back into time. But when you stay there for a while, you realize that a lot of these people are living in these rundown buildings and homes. The government, because it's a socialist economy and they have an embargo, right? And especially where they're positioned at, the government don't have enough money to repair these homes. They don't have enough money for the resources. So a lot of people are not living well. They're living in these depleted home shacks because they're poor. Now they're going to be fed. They don't have to pay rent. They don't have to worry about their health because healthcare is free, education is free. You don't have to pay rent. But look at where you are living at, who you don't have money. You don't have they could do their own repairs, but they don't have enough money to buy the material for the repairs. So it's it's good and it's bad. It's a lot of upside to Cuba, but it's a lot of downside as well. But again, me as an American going to Cuba, if I was to live there, I will be living well because I'm already coming with money. I'm already going to have a bridge of, okay, I'm not going to be working in Cuba. My business is be in America still. So I have money coming in. It's different from us going there as opposed to the people that's there. But the people that's there, especially the younger generation, this is another reason why we're going to have a deep dive in Cuba. The Gen X, which is but I would say the younger Gen X, but really the millennials and the Gen Zs of Cuba, they want the change. They don't want they even though they were taught about the Fidel Castro regime, that's not their ideology. They want capitalism. I'll just put it like that. So Cuba is going to be very interesting, and I'm very curious on how Trump is going to approach it. Thank you, Shammy. Fidel at one time established free medical school for U.S. citizens and only asked that you pay it forward when you return. Exactly. A lot of Americans went there to medical school. I think they still have that program, free medical school. I think they still have that program there. So again, Cuba is not this horrible place that our American government paints it to be. But of course, they're going to paint it as being horrible because they don't want us to know the truth and make a decision for ourselves. They want us to hate Cuba and the Cubans and especially the government. I don't like nobody's government because I know government lies to its people. But again, if you ever go to Cuba, you will see that it's the Cuban people that makes Cuba special. But it is unfortunate that they don't have economic mobility. And they need it. They're being squeezed to death, the people of Cuba. Yeah. So I would just say that. But and here's the thing, Trump is always about the deal. But so when Fidel died and his brother Raul, he took over, but I think he stepped down because he's old. Will Cuba live and die on the Fidel Castro regime and message and ideology? Or will you switch it up and make a deal, make a brand new deal with Trump if there is an offer there for it? But so a lot of times the Cuban government, they are riding under the Fidel Castro ideology. And it's really hurting the people, the Cubans. It's hurting the Cubans more. So yeah, bad management, but bad management, embargoes, a whole bunch of stuff. It's a mess. But that island, it's a gem. It's a beautiful island. It's a beautiful island, but I don't want to see it go back to what it was under Baptista. If it doesn't have to be the Fidel regime or ideology. It needs to be something new and better that the Cuban people can benefit, not just corporate, not the cartels, not the mafia, not Trump's wealthy friends, not the Elon Musk, but the actual people of Cuba. All right, guys, listen, this was cute. When Haiti suffered through an earthquake, Cuba sent doctors. America sent the 82 airborne. True. That is true. That is true. I just think, oh my God, I got to charge up my damn mouse. Well, listen, I don't see anybody requesting to come up. I put the link, but that's okay. Give my charger a little bit more juice. I'm about to get up out of here. Thank you guys for joining me this early Saturday. The breaking news: Nicolas Maduro, president of Venezuela, is no longer president. He was toppled by the Trump administration. All right. Yep, he sure did. And that's why when Nelson Mandela was released, he went to Cuba first to pay his respect to Fidel. Yes, yes. I'm an American. I'm in America. It's all about capitalism. Yeah. And what I don't like about corporate, it is considered a person just like we are. So the Constitution, they have the same rights regarding the constitutions that we do as human beings, because corporations are considered a person. That's what I don't like. So a lot of times in our government here, corporations take precedent over its citizens. They get more kickbacks, they get more support, they get more resources, they get more leeway. That is a problem. But YouTube is a private company that allows us to make money. And in turn, they have made trillions of dollars. So yes, my podcast is on a corporate platform, i.e. YouTube, and I'm making money. And if I lived in Cuba, I would still be having my podcast because I would have money to have a satellite to go live and still make money. But an average Cuban in Cuba right now, they don't have that luxury. They can't afford it, and they probably wouldn't be allowed to. And that's the problem. And that's the problem. And that's it. Happy Saturday, guys. Listen, thank you to everyone that sent in a donation. I love you most of all. Everybody in the chat. I think I'm going to be sticking with my Restream and not StreamYard. I wanted to try this where I'm portrait and landscape at the same time. It's called the moon version or whatever. So yeah, and this conversation will continue. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm going to go live on Sunday because I don't have any videos to upload. And of course, me and the judge will be back on Monday for the first Man Up show of 2026. Happy New Year. Enjoy your weekend. Be safe. Let's all do our research, particularly on Cuba. And we are going to have a Cuban deep dive on Cuba. Yeah, I think I'll get good engagement with that. When are you having the judge back on to argue with you? Monday. So thank you. Appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Happy New Year. Have a great weekend. Stay blessed. Stay safe. Bye. Honey, you see all this goddamn gray. Yes, read. Yes. Read, and research. Yeah. Yep. All right, guys. Bye.